Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Coach Prime, the Colorado Buffaloes, heading on the road to play Colorado State in a football game. That there is legitimate bad blood between these two programs. And as a college football fan my whole life, these kind of games, at least in my opinion, are what make college football the best sport on the planet. I mean, whether you're rooting for Colorado, whether you're rooting for Colorado State, there is a lot of passion. There's a lot of energy going into this football game. Now, I want to take a look at a few key matchups in this football game that I think determine the outcome. I'll give you guys my pick and prediction as well. Now, before we get into that, and as always, and I think most importantly for this episode, let it fly in the comment section. Like whether you agree with me, whether you disagree with me, whether you're mixing it up with the opposing fan base, let it fly in the comment section. This is the beauty of college football. So appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Certainly a game that we'll be breaking down Saturday night. And without further ado, let's get into this one. And y'all who've been rocking with the boys for the last 12 months know that I tend to overcomplicate college football at times. I don't think this game is that complicated. If this Colorado offensive line can have a rebound performance and block up Colorado State, I do like Colorado's chances of winning this football game. Now, that's a big if, especially with what we saw Saturday night in Lincoln, Nebraska. There's two different conversations. One, that Colorado offensive line, it purely wasn't good enough. And not only in terms of one-on-one matchups, guys like Tyler Brown and Khalil Benson just really struggling in that football game. But I think more importantly, and the more frustrating aspects for myself watching back that football game was it wasn't just the one-on-one matchups that you were failing to win. Because you got to give credit to Nebraska. That's one of the best defensive lines that you'll see in the country. They got multiple guys that will be playing in the NFL over the next couple of years. Really good unit. And so if you're just from a personnel standpoint, getting outgunned a little bit, you can live with that. What you can't live with is all the mental mistakes that this Colorado offensive line made. I mean, Nebraska very rarely sent pressure, but they ran a lot of stunts in games up front with their front four. And it had this Colorado offensive line in shambles in terms of the communication. And we kind of said this heading into 2024. I think the personnel on the offensive line for Colorado is significantly better than it was last year. Our biggest question mark was how well can this offensive line come together as a unit? I thought it was quite good against North Dakota State, and it was quite bad against Nebraska and Lincoln on Saturday night. And so not only do you need to play better just one-on-one, personnel needs to play better, 100%. But I think this Colorado offensive line as a unit needs to play better. If you're Coach Prime, you're this Colorado coaching staff, you are locking these five offensive linemen in the film room all week and saying we're looking at every single stunt and game that Colorado State is going to play up front, and we're going to pick it up on Saturday night. Because I look at Colorado on the outside. I look at Colorado State, having watched back that Northern Colorado and Texas game. Colorado State's team speed in the back end is not great. And so you look at Travis Hunter or Jimmy Horn or LeJontay West or a guy like Draylon Miller, who I would like to see play more football for Colorado. I think if you can get them the football in space, kind of like you did against North Dakota State, you're going to put up a lot of points, and I think you have a really good shot at winning this football game. But you have to be able to block it up for Shedeur Sanders and give him time. The most frustrating aspect, I think, watching Shedeur Sanders on the film is, look, when you are faced with blitz packages, that is a little bit more understandable. But when teams are getting pressure consistently with 3 and 4 man pass rushes and they're dropping back 7, 8 guys in coverage, it's really hard for Shedeur Sanders to have pressure in his face while also seeing 7, 8 guys in coverage. And so Colorado needs to do a better job blocking up the front four for Colorado State. And I think the other question mark you have in this football game is, does Colorado State have the dudes to do that like Nebraska did? North Dakota State was solid. Nebraska's really, really good. We're not really sure what Colorado State is, right? You go back to the film against Texas, they weren't really able to get any sort of pass rush or heat on Quinn Ewers. You go to Northern Colorado, they were able to get a little bit more. Obviously, two different offensive lines. Where is Colorado State in terms of how dominant their defensive line is? Really big question mark in this football game. But if you can give Colorado some time, or Shedeur Sanders some time, I do think Colorado will have some success with all their athletes that they have in space. Second conversation I want to have that's been getting a lot of national media attention is the lack of the run game for Colorado, which has been a problem. I'm not going to get up here and say Colorado doesn't need to run the football better. That being said, I think there are different ways that you can work around a lack of a run game. Whether that's just a simple extension of the run game, right? Swing passes, screens, kind of high percentage throws that we know Shadur can make that are kind of helping you stay on schedule in first and second down. Right. This Colorado rushing attack, yes, it needs to get better, but there are other ways you can kind of simulate a rushing attack, getting the football to space, to your playmakers in space on the perimeter. I would like to see Colorado do a little bit more of that and take some pressure off this offensive line that obviously is still figuring itself out in pass protection. So I think the two keys, one, this Colorado offensive line, but I think the biggest question here is like how good is Colorado State in their front four? Are they a team that's able to do what Nebraska did in terms of rushing your four, dropping seven, and getting pressure on Shadur? Because if they can, I think they put themselves in a good place to win this football game. But if they can't, I look at Colorado State secondary and I look at that matchup between their secondary, Colorado's wide receivers, and say, I think Colorado probably has the edge in that. I think the last X factor here is Draylon Miller. Colorado State likes to play a lot of man coverage. They like to have their linebackers work on running backs out of the backfield. We saw Colorado go to this week one against North Dakota State. Draylon Miller, who is basically built like a running back, can carry the football like a running back, but runs routes and pass catches like a wide receiver. Can you get that matchup? Can you get a Colorado State linebacker on a guy like Draylon Miller out of the backfield as a pass catcher? Because if you can get that consistently, and Texas was able to get that a lot, I think that's a really, really big advantage for Colorado, a matchup that I think they can exploit. Now, going to the flip side here, Colorado State's offense, Colorado's defense. Colorado's defense was not nearly as bad as I think a lot of people assume after that Nebraska game. Well, let's be frank, that Colorado offense, it got worked, especially up front, and Nebraska had a lot of short fields, obviously had a pick six. This Colorado defense, in my opinion, is significantly better. Now, you have to get some guys back healthy. I think most notably Chidozie on the inside. I think he's been probably Colorado's best front seven defender, maybe second to Levante Bentley. And so if Chidozie's healthy, I do like Colorado and what they have on the defensive line. One thing I'm looking at that what I'd like to see a little bit more of is the Colorado pass rush. Now, Nebraska didn't give you a ton of opportunity because of how heavy they were running the football, and they did a good job staying on schedule. Look, you went out and got Dayon Hayes and BJ Green, two guys that were second team all conference edge rushers in 2023. This is one of those games that you want to see them really put it together because I don't think this is a Colorado State team that's going to mash on Colorado. I think they're going to go to the passing attack. I don't think there's going to be a lot of staying on schedule. They're going to lean on Fowler Nicolosi and Torrey Horton, who I think is an absolute dude in the passing attack. I want to see, and I haven't been super impressed with Colorado State's offensive line. So this is an opportunity for some of these Colorado edge rushers who I think are very good football players to really impact this football game. I think the other key here is how do you take away Torrey Horton, who I was floored when he didn't go to the NFL draft. You talk about legitimate top end wide receivers in the country. I think Torrey Horton for Colorado State is certainly one of them. That matchup between Travis Hunter and Torrey Horton is going to be absolutely electric. I think you're looking at two of the best players at their position groups going head to head. One of the players I'm looking at that I think needs to play better is Preston Hodge at that nickel spot. I loved Preston Hodge coming from Liberty. Our biggest thing we kind of talked about was he's really solid in coverage. If you're going to play that nickel role, and Colorado wants to stay in that nickel look, they want to play two linebackers, five defensive backs, which means Preston Hodge plays most of the football game, even on first and second down. Preston Hodge has to do a better job tackling in the run game. I think that was probably one of the biggest problems Utah. Preston Hodge, I believe, missed 4 tackles against Nebraska on Saturday night. If you're going to play in that nickel set, Preston Hodge has to tackle and has to do it at a high level. Braden Fowler Nicolosi hasn't looked incredible during the first 2 weeks for a guy that was offered. I think Colorado State fans would agree with this. Like, he was offered reportedly offered $600,000 to transfer out of Colorado State. He hasn't looked like a $600,000 quarterback throughout the first 2 weeks. And I get Texas's defense really, really good, but I wasn't too impressed with the Northern Colorado game either. If you can take away Torrey Horton and you can get after Braden Fowler Nicolosi in the pass rush and make sure you're keeping him in the pocket too, because he is a quarterback that wants to extend plays, I do like Colorado's chances to give Colorado State some problems on the offensive side of the football. So now getting into the pick, which is I'm going to go Colorado to cover the 7 points. And it comes down to this. I think there's a little bit of an overreaction in terms of this Colorado offensive line, which I'm certainly not getting up here. And Colorado fans know we're not getting up here and arguing that this Colorado offensive line is a top 10 unit in the country. They got whooped against Nebraska. There's no way around that. My biggest question mark is Colorado State even close to the level that Nebraska is on the defensive line? My answer so far, and it's early in the season, so it's hard to get a really good read on it. My answer is no. And so I think Shedeur Sanders is going to have a lot more clean pockets to work from. And if he does have clean pockets, I do think he can get after this Colorado State secondary. Give me Colorado to cover the 7 points. We're going to find out a lot about this Colorado State and Colorado team in this football game. Because, again, you look at Colorado State, it's hard to get a read, right? They played Texas, they were just massively outgunned against. And then they played Northern Colorado, who is not a very good football team. And so it's hard to get a read on Colorado State. For Colorado, I think you're still trying to figure out what they are specifically on the offensive line. So we're going to learn a lot about this football game. Obviously, we'll recap it on Saturday night. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Let it fly in the comment section. We'll talk to y'all later.